Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, Israeli officials are demanding answers after discovering one of the bodies Hamas returned was not that of an Israeli hostage. Meanwhile, Hamas is set to release 6 living hostages tomorrow. Jason Perry reports. The U.S. and Ukraine haven't agreed on a rare earth minerals deal yet. Arian Pazdar has why the White House says using the minerals as compensation for aid would benefit both Washington and Kyiv. President Trump expected to sign another round of memorandums while 2 of his nominees are sworn in today. Howard Lutnick as Secretary of Commerce and Kash Patel as FBI Director. Jason Blair at the White House. The Senate passed a budget resolution along party lines after 10 hours of overnight voting. Democrats tried to slow down the effort and use the floor time to target DOJ and Republicans' future tax plans. Lena Weiskup gives us a recap. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass terminates Fire Chief Kristin Crowley after the devastating January wildfires. The move follows ongoing disputes between Bass and Crowley over the department's handling of the fires.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City. Here's Tiffany Meyer.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. Israeli officials are demanding answers, saying one of the bodies Hamas handed over was not that of an Israeli hostage. This week has been an emotional roller coaster for families, as Hamas is set to release 6 living hostages tomorrow. NTD's Jason Perry has the details.
Hamas terrorists handed over the bodies of what they said were 4 deceased hostages on Thursday, and they were supposed to be the bodies of Shiri Bibas, her 2 sons, Ariel and Kafir, and Oded Lifshitz. But after testing the bodies, Israeli forensic specialists said they could confirm the identities of only Shiri's 2 sons and Oded Lifshitz. They said the other body was that of an unidentified woman, not Shiri Bibas. Israeli army spokesperson Daniel Hagari also shared some other findings of the forensics testing.
Contrary to Hamas's lies, Ariel and Kfir were not killed in an airstrike. Ariel and Kfir Bibas were murdered by terrorists in cold blood. The terrorists did not shoot the 2 young boys. They killed them with their bare hands.
Israel's prime minister also shared his thoughts on the tragic situation.
All of Israel is united in grief. And as the prime minister of Israel, I vow that I will not rest until the savages who executed our hostages are brought to justice.
However, Shiri Bibas' sister-in-law appeared to see things differently.
For Ariel and Fair's sake and for Yarden's sake, we are not seeking revenge right now. We are asking for Shiri. The cruelty of Hamas only emphasizes the urgent need to bring Shiri back to us and save the lives of the living hostages and return all the deceased for burial.
The Hamas terrorist group released a statement saying they are investigating a possible error in the identity of the body they returned. Meanwhile, Hamas is set to release 6 living hostages on Saturday. They are Elia Cohen, Tal Shoham, Omer Shem Tav, and Omer Winkart, who were all taken hostage on October 7th. The 2 others are Hisham Al-Sayed and Avera Mengistu, who have been held captive in the Gaza Strip for about 10 years now. This comes as Israelis are still grappling with 3 empty buses that exploded south of Tel Aviv on Thursday. No injuries were reported, and the very next day, residents were seen riding the buses as usual.
I understood yesterday they did go through all the buses and make sure did do the checks that they needed to do. Because of that, I felt safe enough this morning. I wouldn't go last night, but this morning I felt safe enough that I can take a bus.
The Israeli police said they were searching for suspects and advised the public to remain vigilant. Jason Perry, NTD News.
President Trump today telling governors what he thinks about Ukraine's situation on the battlefield. That's as National Security Advisor Mike Waltz explains why a rare earth minerals deal would be beneficial for both sides. NTD's international correspondent Arian Pazdar has the Ukraine update.
During a business session with governors from across the U.S. on Friday, President Trump said the war in Ukraine must end soon.
I've had very good talks with Putin, and I've had not such good talks with Ukraine. They don't have any cards, but they play it tough. but we're not going to let this continue.
The US and Ukraine previously talked about using Ukraine's rare earth minerals as a financial guarantee for the aid the US is sending. But when the Treasury Secretary traveled to Kyiv recently, Ukraine didn't accept the American deal, saying it offers little in return. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz on Friday, suggesting this doesn't make sense.
It was Zelensky last September, as part of his victory plan, it was Zelensky that proposed, hey, let's go into a partnership together. Right. If the United States will invest in us, we have aluminum, we have gallium, we have tritium.
He added that he's sure Zelensky will come to the table and sign the agreement. According to Waltz, closing such a deal would only be beneficial to Ukraine.
What better could you have for Ukraine than to be in an economic partnership with the United States, number one? What better could you have for Ukraine to stop the killing, number two?
Waltz also says the administration has a responsibility to make sure Ukraine pays the aid back, which has been sent using taxpayer money.
You know what Europe's contributions are? Europe's contributions are in the form of loans. And they're often paid back on the interest, by the interest on Russian assets that have been frozen. So Europe gets paid back, but the American people don't? I don't think so.
This comes as the special envoy to Ukraine and Russia, Keith Kellogg, continues talks in Kyiv. Kellogg says he had a long and intense day with the senior leadership of Ukraine and extensive and positive discussions with President Zelensky. Zelensky said this about the meeting.
With General Kellogg, we discussed the frontline situation, the need to release all our prisoners held in Russia, and the necessity of a reliable and clear system of security guarantees.
He added that he instructed his team to work on financial and security agreements with the U.S. Arian Pastar, NTD News.
More of the president's cabinet nominations sworn in today. NTD correspondent Jason Blair joins us live now from the White House. Good evening, Jason. Kash, Patel and Howard Lutnick are the latest of the president's nominees to be sworn in. What updates do you have for us on them?
Yeah, hey, Tiff. So Howard Lutnick was sworn in here at the White House not that long ago. President Trump did participate in the ceremony, and Lutnick did win his confirmation in the Senate on Tuesday, 51-45. He will be leading the Department of Commerce. Now, after the ceremony, Trump did give a talk. He said Lutnick will work to, quote, protect our workers and our wealth and grow our economy into the strongest in the history of the world. Now, also today, Kash Patel, after winning his confirmation in the Senate yesterday on Thursday by 51 votes to 49, did get sworn in by Attorney General Pam Bondi not that long ago as well. Now, Trump was not at that ceremony, but President Trump did comment on Kash Patel's nomination and confirmation. Here's Trump talking about that earlier today.
One of the reasons I loved Kash and wanted to put him in is because of the respect the agents had for him. I think he'll go down as the best ever at that position.
And Kash Patel also spoke at his swearing-in ceremony. Here's a clip from that not that long ago. Have a look.
There will be accountability within the FBI and outside of the FBI, and we will do it through rigorous constitutional oversight starting this weekend.
And Kash Patel will be leading the FBI at a time of unrest. The President Trump's administration has alleged that the agency has been weaponized for political reasons.
And Jason, the president is expected to take more executive actions later this evening. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Tiff, waiting to get more information on that. A White House official did say that we expect 2 memorandums to be signed by the president today. One will be related to extortion from foreign companies, and another will be related to foreign investment and national security, according to this White House official. Back to you.
All right, Jason, thanks for those updates. A federal judge in Washington today retracted his temporary restraining order on the Trump administration's plans to place thousands of employees of the U.S. Agency for International Development on administrative leave. U.S. District Court Judge Carl Nichols, appointed by the first Trump administration, said he was dissolving his temporary block on the administration's plan to downsize the agency, which includes requiring workers in field offices to return to the U.S. He said the claims of harm by plaintiffs to unions that represent the employees were overstated and that they failed to prove their claims were likely to succeed on the merits. The judge did not provide any further relief. Senators on Capitol Hill early this morning passed a budget blueprint paving the way to approving part of President Trump's agenda. Democrats launched a tax on the GOP's future tax plans and possible cuts to social safety net programs. NTD's Melina Weisskopf has the story.
On this vote, the yeas are 52, the nays are 48. The concurrent resolution, as amended, is considered agreed to.
Only one Republican voted with Democrats to oppose the budget resolution, though for different reasons. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky taking issue with the bill raising the deficit instead of truly cutting the budget.
Why not take that crazy spending that Doge and Elon Musk are finding and move it over to securing the border? Instead, fiscal conservatives are faced with a bill they're putting forward to just simply increase the spending.
The resolution is the first step for Republicans to pass a $340 billion budget bill that will fund border operations and immigration enforcement and defense spending.
Which is securing the border and implementing and putting in place his immigration policies, rebuilding our military, and creating energy dominance.
Democrats used several hours of floor time to oppose Republicans' efforts.
Unvetted and unaccountable Doge agents have seized control of government systems and databases that contain vast troves of personally identifying sensitive information about nearly every American. Financial data, health data, social security numbers, home addresses.
And I will offer the third amendment of the evening, one that stops Republicans from kicking people off Medicaid to pay for their billionaire tax breaks.
Although Republicans and President Trump have said Medicaid won't be touched, vowing only to cut waste from the program. In an attempt to derail the Democrats' narrative, a GOP senator offered an amendment to show support for the programs.
On this vote, the yeas are 51, the nays are 49, and the amendment is agreed to.
Democrats, however, opposed it, arguing it doesn't actually protect Medicaid and Medicare. The Senate votes come just 1 week before House Republicans move on a separate approach to enact Trump's agenda. Trump has endorsed the House's version. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Melina Weisskopf, NTD News.
Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass has removed the city's fire chief, Kristin Crowley, 6 weeks after the most destructive wildfires in L.A. history. The mayor's office announced today that Crowley's removal is effective immediately, with retired Deputy Chief Ronnie Villanueva stepping in as interim chief.
Let me be clear. Our firefighters acted heroically during the Palisades fire, and they act heroically every single day. That is without question. Bringing new leadership to the fire department is what they and the people of Los Angeles deserve. As you know, I have called for a full investigation of everything leading up to January 7th. A necessary step to the investigation was the president of the Fire Commission telling Chief Crowley to do an after-action report on the fires. The fire chief refused. We all know that 1,000 firefighters that could have been on duty on the morning the fires broke were instead sent home on Chief Crowley's watch.
The decision follows ongoing disagreements between Mayor Bass and Chief Crowley. Bass accused Crowley of downplaying the risks of the deadly January wildfires, while Crowley cited insufficient funding for the fire department. Although the LAFD's budget was increased by $23 million, some positions were ultimately cut. Bass has appointed 41-year-old LAFD veteran Ronnie Villanueva as interim fire chief following Crowley's ousting. The move comes after the Palisades and Altadena fires destroyed or damaged nearly 18,000 homes and businesses, with at least 29 people killed. The mayor had been on a trip to Ghana as part of a presidential delegation on the day the fires broke out. Coming up, Luigi Mangione, the suspect in the killing of the United Healthcare CEO, appears in a New York City courtroom. This is his first hearing since his arraignment last December. Kristin Corona reports. A federal judge delays the trial for New York City Mayor Eric Adams, but corruption charges remain. Arlene Richards has what's next in the case. And fake bomb threats at the Kennedy Center. What's behind them as the dance group targeted calls the threats a coordinated campaign with ties to the Chinese Communist Party. Iris Tao brings us the details after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson in New York City is set to appear in court today. This will be Luigi Mangione's first hearing since his December arraignment on state murder and terror charges. NTD's Kristin Corona has the details.
Luigi Mangione, 26, appeared in Manhattan criminal court Friday afternoon. According to reports, Mangione was flown to Manhattan by NYPD helicopter. He arrived in the courtroom just before 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, wearing a green sweater, white shirt, and a bulletproof vest. Mangione was surrounded by several security guards. Prosecutors are reviewing evidence including DNA, police reports, crime scene photos, body camera footage, phone records, and other items. Mangione's attorney, Karen Agnifilo, gave an update on the case.
Luigi Mangione remains in federal custody, where he is being prosecuted in 3 jurisdictions by the federal government, by New York State, and by Altoona, Pennsylvania. But he's being held in federal custody, and the Department of Justice has refused to allow him to be in state custody, despite the fact that they've all agreed that the state court is going to go first.
Agnifilo also objected to the pretrial motion schedule, claiming her team hasn't received several records in the 3 cases against him: the state case in New York, a federal case, and a Pennsylvania case. According to reports, dozens of Mangione's supporters had gathered outside the courthouse by 4 a.m. Mangione is accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on December 4th. Thompson was shot outside a Midtown Manhattan hotel while on his way to an investor conference. Police arrested Mangione at a McDonald's in Pennsylvania on December 9th. Authorities say he was carrying a firearm matching the one used in the attack, a fake ID, and a notebook criticizing wealthy executives. He has pleaded not guilty to multiple murder charges, including one linked to terrorism. Mangione faces federal counts that could result in the death penalty. He is being held in a federal jail in Brooklyn alongside high-profile inmates such as Sean Diddy Combs. A separate hearing in Pennsylvania on firearm and forgery charges was canceled. Prosecutors say the state charges would likely go to trial first. If convicted, Mangione could face life in prison without parole. Friday's hearing in New York wrapped up after about 30 minutes, with the judge meeting privately with lawyers, but no details were announced. Kristin Corona, NTD News.
A New York District Court judge today appointed a third-party attorney to provide additional arguments on the DOJ's motion to dismiss the case against Mayor Eric Adams. NTD's legal correspondent Arlene Richards has the update.
New York District Court Judge Dale Ho on Friday delays the trial schedule in the corruption case against Mayor Eric Adams, but he hasn't dismissed the pending charges. The Justice Department and Adams' attorney presented arguments at a hearing on Wednesday in an effort to have the case dismissed. The department had submitted a memo to New York prosecutors last week directing them to drop the case, which resulted in several of them resigning instead. Judge Ho, who admits he has limited authority to question the Justice Department, has appointed a third-party attorney. He's asking the attorney to address questions on a judge's authority to probe further into a request for a dismissal, and what would be the consequences of a judge denying such a request. The judge expressed skepticism during the Wednesday hearing and asked both parties, as well as Adams, several questions. The Justice Department's acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove had stated that such requests are routine and often unopposed. Judge Ho states in the order that he's exercising his authority to seek assistance on his decision-making. He further states that the appointment is appropriate, particularly so in light of the public importance of this case, which calls for careful deliberation. The attorneys on both sides had previously argued that a third-party opinion wasn't necessary. The judge is also allowing other third parties to submit filings by next Friday. The Justice Department, Adams, and the third-party attorney have until March 7th to submit additional briefs. Judge Ho has scheduled a hearing for March 14th. Arlene Richards, NTD News.
Fake bomb threats at Washington, D.C.'s Kennedy Center targeting a performing arts group banned in China. The group now warning that such threats are seeking to undermine Americans' freedoms as the Chinese Communist Party extends its long arm onto U.S. soil. NTD's Iris Tao has more.
As authorities investigate the fake bomb threats at the Kennedy Center on Thursday, Shen, the dance group being explicitly targeted, is now calling these threats part of a larger campaign by the Chinese Communist regime to try to stop this American company from performing.
They're using VPNs. Nobody can seem to find them at this point, but they're sending often identical messages to different places. So yesterday, for example, at the same time that the Kennedy Center got its email, so did the Miller High Life Theater in Milwaukee. So this is a coordinated effort.
The Kennedy Center was forced to evacuate everyone after getting an email on Thursday morning claiming a bomb has been placed in the theater and will be detonated should Shen Yun be allowed to perform. The threat, along with dozens of other bomb threats that Shen Yun has gotten over the years around the world, have all turned out to be fake.
That there's never, ever been any actual bomb, weapon, trace of anything.
Shen Yun, a classical Chinese dance company based in New York, portrays China before communism and tells stories of courageous Chinese people standing up to the CCP's ongoing persecution of Falun Gong, an ancient spiritual practice. Shen Yun's MC at a Friday press conference here in D.C. says the CCP is escalating its years-long campaign to try to censor the show abroad, including by threatening its dancers as well as officials who have shown support to Falun Gong. Here's Li Shai-Lemish showing 2 emails they've recently gotten.
February 11th, 2025, this was actually sent to the Falun Dafa Information Center. Politicians and congressmen from all countries who support Falun Gong will become targets of attack, and even shooting Trump and driving a vehicle loaded with explosives into the White House are not ruled out. February 27th, 2025, on the Shen website, this was an email simultaneously sent to Shen Yun headquarters, to Faithian schools. Children of American Falun Gong members under the age of 10 will be kidnapped, taken to high-rise buildings in the United States, and pushed down from the top. It's particularly hard for me to read because I have 2 young daughters at home.
In addition to these threats, the MC told NTD that the Chinese embassy in the U.S. have been also pressuring American theaters to not let Shen Yun perform, though to no avail. There's also been a leaked CCP document showing a new CCP campaign to target Shen Yun and Falun Gong in the U.S. by weaponizing media and filing lawsuits. Last year, U.S. prosecutors caught and sentenced 2 Chinese agents who tried to bribe the IRS into acting against Shen Yun. The group now calling on the U.S. government to act tougher to stop the Chinese Communist Party from meddling in American life.
Of course, we've seen this in Hollywood. We've seen this in the NBA. Anybody who says something that the CCP does not like, and they don't care if you're a U.S. citizen or where you are, and they will come after you.
Despite the CCP's interference, Shen Yun has now grown to 8 touring companies performing for over 10 million people in 200 cities. The group says they're 100% committed to performing at the Kennedy Center, with shows running through March 2nd with heightened security. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
Coming up, day 2 of CPAC 2025 saw a slew of Trump administration members take the stage. Among them, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, who called for peace and common sense in foreign policy. Luis Martinez brings us the highlights from today's event. And this month, the White House announced more tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China. An author tells Paul Graney how the American dream and jobs could come back. Stay with us for that and more coming up from CPAC. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. The second day of CPAC 2025 saw a slew of Trump administration members take the stage. Our Washington correspondent Luis Martinez has the details.
peace and common sense. That was the main message that National Security Advisor Mike Waltz had during his comments at the second day of the Conservative Political Action Conference in its 2025 edition here at the National Harbor in Maryland. During his opening remarks, National Security Advisor mentioned how the Trump administration is looking for peace in the Middle East and also peace in Europe, and even joked about the possibility of the Trump administration receiving a Nobel Peace Prize at the end of this presidency. But when he referred to the cartels south of the border, the tone was very different.
We are going to unleash holy hell on the cartels. Enough is enough. We are securing our border. The cartels are on notice because without a border, you don't have a country and you don't have sovereignty. And if there's not anything more than America first, than that.
Mike Waltz also made mention of the maximum pressure campaign exerted against the Iranian regime and how the first Trump administration's maximum pressure campaign had yielded results, but a change in policy during the Biden administration had undone that.
And only under his leadership, remember the Biden administration was trying to do some type of deal. They were obsessed with a ceasefire, but their approach was concession after concession after concession and putting more pressure on Israel than they did on Hamas. Only when President Trump came in and said, look, there will be all hell to pay, the credible threat that only he can deliver, did we see this deal come into place still under Biden.
U.S. Special Envoy for Special Missions Richard Grenell also took to the stage on the second day of CPAC and mentioned how an American first foreign policy deals with countries as they are in the real world and does not deal in regime change.
Trump has done something different than Republican foreign policy leaders have done for 25 years.
This is a paradigm shift, what he's doing.
We articulate very clearly under Donald Trump, we don't do regime change. We are going to deal with the countries that are in front of us. And our criteria is not how do we make that country better, how do we make America better, stronger, and more prosperous for the people that live here.
During this second day of the Conservative Political Action Conference here at the National Harbor in Maryland, we also heard from HUD Secretary Scott Turner, VA Secretary Doug Collins, and White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. President Trump is expected to speak at CPAC 2025 on Saturday. Reporting from the National Harbor in Maryland, Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
With President Trump implementing an additional 10 to 25% tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, how will the U.S. be affected? Spencer Morrison spent over a decade researching for his book on this exact issue. He says tariffs will revive the American economy. Here's his conversation with NTD's Paul Graney at CPAC.
We're here at CPAC outside Washington, D.C. Delighted to be joined by Spencer Morrison. He's an entrepreneur, a lawyer, and he's been researching for this book for over 10 years. This is Reshore, How Tariffs Will Bring Our Jobs Home and Revive the American Dream. Spencer, great to see you.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah,
it's
indeed.
a pleasure.
Now, tariffs, we discussed a little bit offline. I'll hand this to you. President Trump, in a recent interview with Bloomberg, said his favorite word in the dictionary was tariff. Now, your timing is just incredible on this. For 10 years, you've been researching this book. How excited are you that now President Trump is going so strong on this exact issue?
This is amazing. This is a perfect storm. It's great for the book, but more importantly, it's going to be great for the American people. If President Trump follows through with all of his election campaign promises to promote tariffs, we're going to see an amazing resurgence of America's manufacturing industry that's going to create good middle-class jobs and ultimately revive the American dream.
I think it's been incredible to watch because for many, many years, many decades even, the Republican Party was very against anything that interfered with what they called free trade, any kind of tariffs, subsidies, etc. And President Trump now has warmed to this idea, to say the least.
Yeah, President Trump has always been on point with tariffs. I remember seeing an interview back in 1980, and he was talking about the need for tariffs. This is sort of an interesting fact, but one of the core principles of the Republican Party when it was founded was actually to promote the tariff, because the Republican Party was, at the time, the party of industry. Somewhere that thread got dropped along the way to the detriment of America's economy and our people.
Why? What is so good about them?
About tariffs? Well, ultimately, I'll give you a brief history of tariffs because this is something that it never gets talked about. So the first major piece of legislation after the success of the American Revolution was the Tariff Act of 1789. The Tariff Act did two things. First, it imposed tariffs on manufactured goods for the purposes of raising revenue for the new government. But an explicit purpose of that was also to develop native manufactured products. So one of the things that the Founding Fathers discovered throughout the course of the American Revolution is that it was really, really hard to get out of Britain's yoke because the colonies did not produce firearms. During the American Revolution, the colonial armies were supplied by France and the Dutch, other European powers. They gifted the colonies over 80,000 firearms, uniforms, knives, the whole kit and caboodle. And what George Washington and Alexander Hamilton found is that in order to secure America's political independence from Great Britain, we also need to secure our economic independence. So if we rely on foreign powers, at that time it was European powers, how could we ever have an independent country if we don't make the goods that we need to defend our freedom? And what's terrifying is that's exactly what's happening now with our reliance on China.
So what changed? If we had the founders who realized this point, we have Donald Trump who realizes this point, what happened in between?
I think a big portion of it is complacency. So at the close of World War II, America was the unrivaled superpower. For example, America produced 72% of all steel produced in the whole world, and that was in 1945. So there was an exuberance at the time. America's economy was unrivaled. What do we need to protect the economy for? So people essentially forgot the wisdom of the past, and slowly we've been rediscovering it. The steel industry is poignant because President Trump has imposed tariffs on steel and aluminum.
Yes.
Yeah, very necessary from a national security perspective. But also economically, America doesn't produce enough steel to fund our own economy. Yes. So we use 100 million tons of steel every year. We only produce 70 million tons. What happens if a conflict breaks out and we need to ramp up our production? It's just not possible.
The president has talked about two different types of tariffs, we could say, or two levels of tariffs. He said if you have a small tariff, you'll make money on the goods that are coming in. Okay, which he said maybe we can even abolish the federal income tax. Well, that's another discussion. He said if you make the tariffs high enough, lofty enough, then you will force the people to go around the tariffs by building up their manufacturing base here in America. I think for many people, you talk about in your book, these areas of America that have been devastated by the manufacturing leaving America. What kind of timeline are you expecting that it would take to actually start to see this reshoring, significant amounts of reshoring come back?
Well, as you mentioned, it really depends on what level of tariffs are being imposed. What a tariff does is it imposes a cost on any imported products into the country. If that cost is high enough, it no longer is economical to import those products. And factories will need to be built in America to pick up this economic production slack, right? So if the tariffs are aggressive, we'll see the reshoring of America's industry in very short order. One historical example I can point to is the great surge of industrialization that occurred in the build-up to World War II. America was able to ramp up our industrial production by an order of magnitude within the span of essentially 2 to 3 years.
Incredible.
It's possible to do it again, but if we're doing that, the tariffs need to be very, very aggressive.
You would assume that given automation and all the technological advancements since then, that perhaps we would be able to spin it up even faster.
I'm skeptical of that, and the reason for that is that the economy is now very much integrated on a global level. If we want to scale up our production, it's going to be a difficult road right now, and there's two main reasons for that. Number one, America at that time back in World War II, we produced all of the machine tools that would be required to build new factories and to build new machines. We don't do that anymore. In fact, America produces fewer machine tools than Italy, which is a relatively small European country. The second case that I'd like to bring to your attention is the issue of silicone chips that are used in computers. Currently, almost all of the silicone chips are built in Taiwan, and we import them here. If we wanted to reshore that production, it's going to be difficult, not only because there's large capital costs associated with manufacturing chips, but also we don't have the machinery to make that. The photolithography machines are actually produced in the Netherlands.
I think this is one of the incredible things watching the offshoring to China was that the vast network of factories and production that they set up there makes it very hard for countries to actually leave because they don't have the supplementary products, they don't have the infrastructure in place. Even you consider the number of ports that are in China and the infrastructure around exporting. So it seems like a major operation to actually wrestle this influence and power away from China.
Exactly. This takes us all the way back to Adam Smith. Adam Smith, of course, wrote The Wealth of Nations, which is the textbook on economic growth. One of the big factors in economic growth is how much capital you can accumulate. Capital being factories, machinery, human capital, the knowledge of how to produce things. And what we've done since 1973 is we have been bleeding out all of that capital all over the world. For example, since 1979, America has shed 7 million manufacturing jobs. We didn't just lose the factories, we didn't just lose the machinery, but we lost the know-how of 7 million people who could be innovating in our manufacturing industries. So it will take time to rebuild all of that human capital.
So explain then, given this, and it seems so obvious to us discussing now that this was the wrong thing to do, explain exactly how tariffs, or the lack thereof, caused this to happen.
So the lack of tariffs is primarily to blame for this issue. And the reason for that is something called market externalities. So it sounds a little complicated, but I promise it's a relatively simple concept. Think of water, or think of money being like water. Money likes to flow downhill to wherever the price of anything is cheaper, whether that price is of labor, of land, of lax environmental laws. America has the high ground. We have relatively high labor standards. Our employees are paid well, they get vacations. We remediate environmental disasters. A lot of developing countries, and particularly China, they don't do this.
Yes.
So a tariff, instead, those costs of environmental degradation, of social damage, are externalized on the Chinese populace, rather than baked into the price of a good. Whereas in America, you know, all of those factors are baked into the price of the production. So what a tariff does is it will essentially make up for that externalized cost so that America can compete on price with developing countries that have lax environmental laws or in some cases have slave labor.
And then very last question, Spencer. It seems like this is not just a simple issue of adding more tariffs and like we talked about, like increased revenue for America or more factories. It seems like this may fundamentally change the shape of the American economy. We've got about a minute. I'd just like to get your comments on that.
So what's happened since 1973 is America has shifted from being a production-based economy to a consumption-based economy. We used to make and now we take. What President Trump is doing is he's transforming the American economy into a productive economy. And I like to say, if you want to make America great again, America has to make great products again. So that should be the core of President Trump's tariff agenda, and if it's successful, it's going to revitalize the American economy and revive the American dream.
Spencer Morrison, thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
And we have some breaking news. The Supreme Court today dashed President Trump's plan to immediately fire Hampton Dellinger, the head of the Office of Special Counsel. That's an independent agency that investigates whistleblower claims. The ruling allows Dellinger to remain in the job through at least the middle of next week. The court said it would hold the case on pause until February 26. That's when a temporary order handed down by a lower court is set to expire. A district court hearing is scheduled then. Dellinger was appointed by President Biden back in 2024 for a 5-year term. He was fired shortly after Trump returned to the White House. And Trump is set to rescind federal approval of New York City's congestion pricing program. The program is set to reduce traffic flow and raise money to upgrade the city's aging subway and bus system. Let's hear what New Yorkers have to say about it.
It's a catch-22, right? Because then you're stuck with traffic, but it's easier on your pocket.
It's not. It's a good thing.
It's a good thing?
How come? Yeah. It's charging me too much money on my Easy Pass.
It's affecting business. That is going to attract the passenger to come in knowing that the taxes are not going to be more than the fare. If you can access, then that's fine, Yeah.
Are you against or pro for the congestion pricing in New York State?
Against.
So do you think it's a good idea that Trump is actually stopping the congestion pricing in New York?
Yes.
Why?
Because I have to save a little money. Because I got grandkids, I got kids, and I have to retire in a couple of years. So we like to have a little more money in the bank.
Coming up in hockey, Canada topped the U.S. 3-2 in a thriller last night. So when will we see this event again? Dave Martin joins us to discuss after the break. Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Now for your sports news, we're joined by NTD's Dave Martin. Dave, a lot going on right now, but let's start in hockey as Canada beat the U.S. last night in overtime to win the inaugural Four Nations Face-Off title. Does it look like this event will be here to stay?
I would think so. I haven't seen anything official yet. The play was so intense. Last night's game, I wanted the game just to go to overtime just so we can watch some more. Overtime was great too. The U.S. had so many good opportunities to start off overtime. They were denied every time though by Canada's Jordan Binnington, their goalie. And then Connor McDavid, he's the best player in the world. He scored to win it. But I thought Binnington was a difference, though, for Team Canada. Now, I think this event was a little more intense with everything that's kind of going on politically right now with Canada. You have the tariffs. You have to talk about Canada joining the U.S. and the opposition to that. Trump calling Trudeau governor, of course. But Canada, they've always been the best hockey country in the world. This time, the U.S. showed at least hanging with them, and they beat them Saturday night. They were very close again last night. Now, meanwhile, betting sites like BetMGM, DraftKings, FanDuel said this was their most bet event on a hockey game ever. You also had ticket prices in the secondary market for this average of $2,500. So there was a lot of interest in this event. I would think it would be coming back.
Looking at college football playoff news, the commissioners of the SEC and Big Ten said the way teams are seeded for the playoffs should change. What kind of difference would this make?
For the first round, it is actually pretty significant. The top 4 seeds get first round buys, and then at the remaining 8 seeds, the higher seeds get home field advantage. And in these last playoffs, all 4 home teams won their first round games, so it's pretty big. Now, after the first round, it has very little impact. There's no second round buys. All the games are played on neutral fields. But how they seeded last time was the top 4 highest ranked conference champions got the top 4 seeds. But the Big 12 and the ACC, they were kind of down this year. So you had Boise State and Arizona State, who were ranked 9th and 12th, getting those 3rd and 4th seeds. Now, meanwhile, I think it was Texas and Penn State were ranked 3rd and 4th, but had to settle for the 5th and 6th seeds. So it didn't work out where really the top 4 teams were the top 4 highest seeds. It's not going to work out every time like that. But meanwhile, whatever changes are going to be made, it has to be made with the 10 FBS commissioners and Notre Dame, and we're not at that stage yet.
Shifting gears to baseball, ESPN has announced they'll be opting out of their media contract with Major League Baseball at the end of the season. What reason was given here?
You know, it seems to come down to money. I mean, ESPN's statement mentioned fiscal responsibility without going into anything specific. Major League Baseball's statement said flat out ESPN wanted to reduce the fees they pay. Now, ESPN, they've televised baseball since 1990, so a very long partnership, but it's been reduced coverage in recent years. I mean, this contract, this is a 7-year contract started in 2022 with an option to opt out of the final 3 years, and that's what happened here. Now, that deal was just for 30 regular season games, mostly on Sunday night as well as some playoff games. Their previous contract had up to 90 regular season games. And meanwhile, ESPN stopped their daily Baseball Tonight show in 2017. Now, right now, outside of ESPN, baseball has major deals with Fox and Turner Sports. They've got minor deals with kind of Apple and Roku. So it seems like the door is actually still open for ESPN and baseball to come to an agreement. So stay tuned.
In college basketball, we only have 2 games involving ranked teams on tonight, but one of them is for first place in the Big Ten.
Yeah, Michigan State at Michigan tonight, a great rivalry. They're first and second in the Big Ten. Right now, the Wolverines are in first place, just a half a game ahead. They're on a roll right now. They've won 6 straight games. They've passed Michigan State in the process. But the Spartans actually started conference play on a roll. They won their first 9 Big Ten games, but they're just 3-3 since. Michigan, led by center Vladislav Golden, leads them in scoring. He put up 20 points in their win over Ohio State Sunday. Now, there's still a couple of weeks left in the season. Michigan, though, is looking to go from finishing last place last year in the Big Ten to winning the Big Ten this time around. A win tonight would go a long way in doing that. The game starts at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
Well, Davis Allis, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Tiff.
And that's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.